Hey guys, Walls here with an overview of the setting map and plot map that we're working with for our stories this week. So we talked about how setting is more than just place and time. It's also the customs, beliefs, and values of the people in that time and place. So specifically, the stories we're reading this week were set in the 1950s England, and then we're going to read some stories that are set in the 1950s in the USA, in America. And these customs, beliefs, and values that we discussed are really going to give us a clearer picture or a better understanding of what happens in the story and why each story is so effective in what it does. So we talked about how it was customary over here in the upper left-hand corner. That's where we put our customs. It was customary for the men to go to work and the women to stay at home. And we talked about this concept of keeping up with the Joneses. So if I walk out of my, 3-bedroom, 2-bath house and into my nice, clean, well-kept yard with my picket fence around it in the 1950s, and I look to my left and I see that Mr. Jones has the 1955 Chevy car, and I'm still rocking that 1952 Chevy. I don't look as cool as Mr. Jones, so I need to upgrade. I need to keep up with the Joneses when it comes to my personal belongings and my status so that I don't fall behind. We're dealing with record levels of prosperity here coming after World War II. So people were moving out to the suburbs and buying nice things and just trying to keep up with each other when it came to that kind of stuff. Now, when we talk about customs, that's what people do. And what they do helps us better understand or see the things that they believe and the stuff that they think is important. That's beliefs and values. Now, in the 1950s, we're in the Cold War. And the Cold War, they call it the Cold War because it wasn't a lot of fighting. There wasn't a lot of action. It was all kind of behind the scenes stuff. And we began the space race. We were trying to get to outer space and have scientific and mathematic advancements at a better pace than the rest of the world. And so there's this belief that science has the answers kind of permeated society. You had physicists and chemists that were national celebrities. And that kind of went into the schools as well. Now, nowadays in schools, we have science, technology, engineering, and math. We have STEM classes. So that's kind of, it's all a through line. So, science has the answers was a major belief at the time. Then we had men equal the breadwinners and women equal the homemakers. That was just kind of a general belief at the time about how the household should work. And that shows that they didn't just value family, they also valued the family unit. There's this idea that the family unit was very important, and keeping up appearances was very important within that family unit. Work ethic was highly valued, and status at work in the community was also highly valued at the time. And you'll see that in the short stories we read. Look at the male characters and how they describe the work they do and what's important to them, and you'll see that portrayed. Because the author of the story, Roald Dahl, was a dude living in the 1950s. All right, so let's talk about plot. Now, after you read your story, you need to make a plot map. And this is what it's going to look like. Let me put me over here in the middle here. So the plot map, turn your paper sideways like we did in class and draw your witch hat. I call that the witch hat diagram. And we don't want to just talk about what happens. It's important to identify the specific actions that happen in the exposition, the stuff that happens in the rising action, the climax, falling action, and resolution. But we also want to talk about who the protagonist is, who the antagonist is. We want to find examples of flashback and foreshadowing. How did the author manipulate time in the story to make the story more effective? And then we want to talk about theme. There might not be a lesson, at the end of the story. The author isn't going to go, and the moral of the story is. But every story we read has a lesson that we can take from the time and place of the story and apply it to our lives here and now. So after you read your short story, stop and think for a minute. Like, man, what can I learn from what happened in the plot that I can apply to my life? And once you write that down, make sure you support it. What happened in the story that makes you think that that's the theme? All right, so to talk about rising action a little bit more, when you do your rising action, when you write down specific events that happen in the rising action of the story, make sure you include the inciting event. What starts the conflict between the protagonist and the antagonist? Is it a specific event? Did one character say something to the other character that started it? Did one character do something to the other character that started it? And remember that the rising action and falling action don't have to be equal. There might not be equal parts rising action and falling action. The climax doesn't always divide the story in half. One story might be mostly rising action, and then the climax, falling action, and resolution happen very quickly. Or one story, the climax might happen pretty close to the beginning, and then the rest of the story is falling action and resolution. All right, so those are things to consider as you make your plot maps. If you have any questions or concerns, hit me up on Remind or in Google Classroom, and I'll talk to you soon.